Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. I'm hoping that you can all see my screen because really what I want to talk about today is a topic that I'm calling, "Are you falling for the pill for an ill trap?" And you might have some idea of what this means, but for those of you who are kind of like, is that what I'm talking about is this tendency that even myself years ago found myself falling into, but I see a lot of prospective clients I interview and just in general people struggling with their health fall into, which is getting to this place of desperation after you've been suffering and struggling with symptoms. Often it's for months and sometimes even years, where you get kind of in this like very mode of just like or solution after solution, and often it's sort of a one-off type of promise, whether it's like the perfect supplement or some sort of very specific diet that's been promised to bring IBS into remission. You know, being a little sarcastic and exaggerative here, but I think you understand where I'm going with this. And say that there aren't wonderful supplements, there aren't awesome therapeutic diet approaches. What I really am trying to say is that oftentimes that alone isn't going to be enough to completely get a person to a place of high function. And I say this from my own personal experience as well. And I really feel like the majority of people who are struggling with things like IBS, autoimmune disease, need to really have a more comprehensive support process and a more diverse toolbox to work from to achieve full remission or enough improvement that they can maintain that for the long haul. So what does that really mean and what does that look like? Really what I want to talk a little bit about today is how I approach this issue from the perspective of the program work I do with my clients. And this isn't by any means to be a sales pitch per se, but to more so use my approach as a way of conveying an understanding that I found just happens to work really well and also much deeper than just using a one-off strategy like supplements only or diet only with a client. So what I'm actually showing you right now on my screen is a visual slide that I actually end up walking through a lot of my prospective clients. And you can say, look, this is visually how I approach healing the body, and predominantly aimed at obviously IBS and autoimmune disease, because that is the niche of folks that I tend to really attract into my practice, that I really love to work with. However, I feel like this is applicable to anyone on a chronic health journey that's just trouble losing weight and fatigue in some cases, all the way to like migraines and sensitivities. It really doesn't matter. Anything on the spectrum, I believe this has applicability to. And I think as I go through this model, you'll get a better sense for why this is. But really what I want to speak to is, generally speaking, you can break down a whole person into three main categories, in my opinion. And we're looking at specifically the health of the physical body, the health of the environment in which we live, and the role of the nervous system. And you could argue the nervous system is part of the physical body, but because the nervous system also contains essentially our energy system, it's also very much connected to kind of, I would consider our life force energy or our spiritual life force. It's a little bit beyond the physical. And I feel like that in and of itself deserves its own pillar in the triangle you see here in terms of optimizing health, because it is so key. The nervous system is in a sense like the command center of the body, like the operating system in a computer, and we don't want to leave that out. And the reason why I go through this type of visual with my prospective clients and why I'm offering this up to you today is just to give you deeper thought on what you've explored so far on your own healing journey, and also to think a bit more about when you're out in the world looking at different therapies and silver bullet solutions and approaches to really consider how deep is the approach going? Is it really hitting on the whole person on a comprehensive level? And if you're not seeing on some level the approach extend much beyond just the physical body, I would argue that inherently it's limited. And I say this because increasingly I found all three of these pillars really are a part of just about every single client I've worked with's journey, and they certainly were a part of my journey. In fact, for me, I was very stuck for many years in just the physical body side of this because I had no clue the environment I was living in was playing a major role in my lack of resolution to my IBS and colitis issues. Not only that, but I also didn't have a very deep understanding of the nervous system or understanding of the types of maladaptive programs that were running in my brain, inherited trauma, attachment issues, all of that, right? And this is super key. So let me talk a little bit about kind of what these pillars really means in detail. So the physical body is probably the one that most people are most familiar with and have a more tangible idea about. And that's, I kind of do these into three subcategories, as you can see on the image. So the physical body, I sort of did that down into movement, nutrition and diet, and root cause testing. And the majority of clients actually come in with a pretty deep interest in either the nutrition and diet or the root cause testing, or both. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a very solid starting point for most people. But I also end up eventually educating them that as we explore nutrition and diet and we dial that in and we do some testing, we absolutely want to consider these other things as well. And so why would we look at these specific components of the physical body? Well, first and foremost, I think most of us intuitively know that we need adequate movement in the right amount in a way that inherently brings us joy to keep our bodies healthy. And that's going to really vary person to person and is dependent a lot on the physical condition and health that you're in the moment. And so I consider this with each client individually, but I also see it as a process of get a client to maybe reflect on, are they just going to the gym because they feel they have to do that to quote unquote be healthy or burn calories every day? Or are they going to the gym because they inherently really love that? They love lifting weights or they love working on an elliptical machine. You know, that's the big piece of the process of regaining health. And so whether we're looking at movement or any other pillar on this diagram here, part of what I try to guide clients to do is think about how authentically does this match up with what your heart and soul truly desires for you as a lifelong course of life, right? Like, you don't want to be through the motions, so to speak, on a daily basis, doing things that inherently deep down make us resentful or feel really contractive, like it's really a lot of work and I don't like this, right? Because I would argue that everyone has a form of movement that inherently brings them joy. It's just a process of sometimes helping people to discover that. Are your struggles with bloating, constipation, and diarrhea keeping you home on Friday, Saturday nights, clicking through Netflix because you're dealing with stomach cramping? Or simply need to have a bathroom nearby? Have you stopped being active and joining your friends at the gym because it flares your symptoms and wipes you out for the rest of the day? How about avoiding social gatherings involving food because of extreme anxiety over food reactions or sudden bathroom runs in public? Or because you are too embarrassed to explain your limited diet to others? The isolation, loneliness, and depression that comes with an IBS or IBD struggle is real and often worse than the physical symptoms. I'm here to tell you that you deserve better than just living with this reality and suffering alone. From a person who has lived this nightmare and come out the other end and who has helped many others do the same, there is hope and you are worth the investment. Click the link below to schedule your free 15-minute gut check call. So that's the movement pillar. Nutrition and diet is pretty straightforward. That obviously is looking at a client's food journal, getting a sense of what are they eating, connecting back into the symptoms they're coming in with, and making very specific targeted recommendations to help them get those symptoms under control and give them traction and improving their health right off the bat. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, nutrition and diet is probably the quickest and fastest guidance I can give right out of the gate to a client that will start to yield fairly quick results, faster than supplements, faster than root cause testing, because it can take time for the tests to come back, for one. And secondly, it can take time to address the things we find in testing. So nutrition and diet to me is foundational and pivotal. And again, if your approach or you're working with a practitioner that isn't looking at your food journal, something is missing. Testing, this is, again, running a suite of labs. And again, my philosophy is not to over test, but we do want to run enough tests to have a good sense of what is going on beneath the surface. Often I'm looking at the gut, I'm looking at hormone balance, thyroid, hidden infections. Those are the main pillars in the root cause testing. Sometimes I'll look at toxicities depending on the complexity of the client. This is helping me to identify any root cause physiological stressors. And those are important to address because, as long as those problems are in the body, they're absolutely going to slow down progress and get in the way of improvements we're going to make in terms of environment, in terms of nutrition, as well as in terms of trying to balance out and regulate the nervous system. Now, if we look at the environment component of this diagram, again, we have three subcategories: reducing toxins, some sort of sun, I call it sun and nature exposure, basically developing a relationship with the outer environment, with the earth, right? And then optimizing circadian rhythm. And that often is referring more to just energy curve over the day, as well as sleep-wake cycle. And it's not uncommon for me to see clients that inherently have a lot of trouble sleeping, are struggling with fatigue during the day. There's just dysregulation. They're super slow to wake up in the morning, or sometimes they're really jacked up at night when they should be tired and going to bed. And then, of course, during the night, waking up frequently or just taking a long time to fall asleep. So this is all part of optimizing circadian rhythm. And there's very specific practices and techniques we can use to do that in functional medicine. The other thing is, consider that we do live in fairly artificial from nature environments these days too. A lot of us live in big cities with a lot of concrete and people and traffic smog and congestion around us. And even if we don't live in a big city, a lot of our time, because many of us work, is spent indoors under lighting, sometimes even working in buildings without windows. And we have to consider that this does have a very definite impact on the body. We are, as human beings, meant to have connection with the earth, connection with sunlight, connection with the seasonal change, connection with our outer environment. And so sometimes this is a pillar that we really have to kind of on a bit, depending on what a person's lifestyle looks like. And you would be amazed at, how changes in this regard can really impact on a person's health as well. And then reducing toxins basically refers to just whether these are toxins coming from the home we live in, because there might be, say, damage in the home a client is unaware of until we start diving into that, body care products we're using on our skin, anywhere in between. This, again, can really put a toxic load on the system and make it very difficult for the body to work in optimal function and self-regulate and heal through different imbalances. Lastly, let me just touch a bit on the nervous system. So the three subcategories I have here are emotional regulation, meditation, and deep listening, and breath work. And each of these, in my perspective, have sort of a influence on the nervous system. And of course, there are other things we could put here too, but these are the broader subcategories that I really try to, at a very basic level, at least, impart skills to my clients in. One of the certifications I have actually is as a heart math practitioner. And this is a system of learning to use the heart and specific techniques around the heart space to teach clients emotional regulation skills. And it's a very simple and very easy to do type of training, and which is why I went and did the training, because I felt like it would be very easy for people to grasp and learn and apply in their day-to-day life. And so through my program work, this is the way I try to help clients learn some level of emotional regulation skills. Again, there's lots of different techniques for breath work, and this is something that I often, again, teach clients, give them resources to dabble in and see what kind of sticks, what resonates with them. We try to emphasize that it's important to do some sort of breathing practice on a daily basis and help a client sort of discover what feels
most resonant for them, or think about what the symptoms they're experiencing, what type of breath work might be for them starting out of the gate. And then meditation and deep listening. So again, there's lots of different resources out there for that. And I offer up my favorites through my program work with clients. In a sense, I try to offer an array of techniques, skills, and exposures, hoping that, a person will individually find a few things that really stick and resonate, that they're noticing are making a substantial impact in how they're feeling, and they can practice on a day-to-day level. This is, in a nutshell, what I feel is a more holistic approach to healing the body. And just to bring this full circle, really what I want to end by saying is that when you're out in the world looking for methods, practitioners to help you, I truly feel that you might get to a point of improvement with one specific thing, like I was saying earlier, a specific diet or some specific supplements. But I feel eventually most people are going to hit a wall and they're going to just stop. And healing the body is really breaking through different layers and coming up against more and more elements that are actually contributing to the long-standing nature of the chronic disease. And most people that I've interviewed or come to work with me, there's a complexity to what they're dealing with, and they've been on this path for some time and have tried things, and these things aren't working.
Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.